So, you look at the tech landscape today, and it's dominated by these massive, seemingly invincible companies. But for every giant that stands tall, there's a graveyard full of those that have fallen. It's a cliché, but it's true. The tech industry is brutal. The failure rate is incredibly high, and it's not just small startups that get wiped out. We're talking about household names, companies that were once at the very top of their game, pioneers that defined entire categories. They had the money, the talent, the market share, and then they didn't. It's a sobering reminder that in tech, past success guarantees absolutely nothing. What's interesting is that there's rarely a single clean reason for these collapses. It's almost always a complex cocktail of factors. Sometimes it's a fatal internal misstep, a stubborn refusal to change, a catastrophic leadership decision, or just plain arrogance. Other times it's about overwhelming external pressure, a new competitor with a revolutionary idea, a sudden shift in consumer behavior, or a technological wave that they just couldn't catch. More often than not, it's a messy combination of both. A small crack on the inside gets pried open by a huge force from the outside, and the whole structure comes crashing down. So for this video, we're gonna dive deep into some of the most famous flameouts in tech history. We'll look at what went wrong, why it went wrong, and what lessons we can learn from their mistakes. Because understanding these failures is key to understanding what it truly takes to survive and thrive in this space. It all comes down to a few core principles: adaptability, a deep understanding of your market, and maybe the most important and difficult of all, flawless execution. These are the stories of the ones who couldn't keep up. Alright, let's start with a big one. BlackBerry. For a while there, if you were a serious person, a business professional, you had a BlackBerry. That physical keyboard was iconic, the push email was revolutionary, and BBM was the original secure messaging app that everyone wanted. They owned the corporate world and were making serious inroads with consumers. They were on top of the world, a true status symbol. It felt like their position was unshakable. They had built this incredible moat around their ecosystem with security, reliability, and that oh-so-addictive keyboard. They weren't just a phone company, they were a communication platform. But then, 2007 happened. The iPhone arrived. And BlackBerry's reaction was, to put it mildly, a massive miscalculation. They dismissed it. They saw it as a toy, not a serious tool. They couldn't imagine people wanting to type on a glass screen. They doubled down on what they knew best, sticking rigidly to physical keyboards and their own proprietary BlackBerry OS. While iOS and Android were building these vast, open ecosystems with app stores that offered endless possibilities, BlackBerry kept its walls up. They failed to see that the game had changed. It wasn't just about email and security anymore, it was about apps, media, and a seamless user experience. And by the time they realized their mistake, and tried to pivot with devices like the BlackBerry Storm, it was already too late. The world had moved on. Remember MySpace? For a generation it was the internet. It was your first online profile, the place where you customized your page with glittering GIFs and auto-playing music, and meticulously curated your top 8 friends. It was a cultural phenomenon. At its peak, it was the most visited website in the United States, even surpassing Google. They had a massive, engaged user base and were the undisputed king of social media. It seemed like they had cracked the code for online community, blending personal profiles, music, and blogging into one sticky platform. They were a behemoth, a cornerstone of internet culture in the mid-2000s. But while MySpace was focused on being a media portal, cluttered with ads and celebrity promotions, a cleaner, more streamlined competitor was quietly gaining ground: Facebook. Facebook focused on simplicity, real-world connections, and a consistent user interface. MySpace, on the other hand, became a chaotic mess of user-generated HTML, making every page a potential eyesore and security risk. They failed to innovate on their core social features, getting bogged down by their corporate acquisition by News Corp, which prioritized monetization over user experience. They were slow to adapt to the shift towards clean design and mobile-first thinking. Facebook outmaneuvered them at every turn, and MySpace's user base bled away until it became a ghost town, a digital relic of what it once was. Now for a more recent and much faster failure: Quibi. This one was a spectacle. It launched in 2020 with nearly $2 billion in funding and some of the biggest names in Hollywood and tech behind it, like Jeffrey Katzenberg and Meg Whitman. The premise was specific. Premium, high production value content, delivered in quick bites of 10 minutes or less, designed exclusively for viewing on your phone. They even had this turnstile tech that let you seamlessly switch between portrait and landscape viewing. On paper, they saw a gap people watch tons of video on their phones, so why not create a Netflix-quality experience just for that? The problem was, they fundamentally misjudged their audience and the entire mobile video landscape. They assumed people wanted polished, episodic shows on their phones during their in-between moments like waiting for a coffee. But in reality, those moments were already filled by free platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. People weren't willing to pay a monthly subscription for short-form content when an endless supply of it was already available for free. The high costs of producing A-list content, combined with a business model that nobody asked for, and a launch that coincided with a global pandemic that kept everyone at home with their big-screen TVs, meant Quibi was dead on arrival. It shut down just 6 months after launching, becoming a poster child for a solution in search of a problem. Most of the failures we're talking about are business failures, bad strategy, poor execution, missed opportunities. But Theranos was different. This was a failure of science, ethics, and honestly, a spectacular case of outright fraud. Founded by Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos promised to revolutionize healthcare. Their pitch was incredible. A proprietary machine called the Edison that could run hundreds of blood tests from just a single tiny pinprick of blood from your finger. It was, the holy grail of diagnostics, cheap, fast, and accessible. Holmes became a media darling, hailed as the next Steve Jobs, complete with the signature black turtleneck. They raised over $700 million and were valued at $9 billion at their peak. The only problem? The technology never worked. It was all a lie. Behind the slick marketing and the powerful board of directors was a company that was secretly using traditional, commercially available machines to run most of its tests. The Edison machine was unreliable and produced wildly inaccurate results, putting real patients at risk. The entire enterprise was built on a foundation of deception, intimidation, and a fake-it-till-you-make-it culture that just, well, went way too far. When investigative journalism from the Wall Street Journal finally exposed the truth, the whole house of cards collapsed. Theranos serves as a chilling reminder that in tech, especially when people's health is at stake, you can't just move fast and break things. The substance actually has to be there. Let's turn the clock back a bit to the early days of the web. Before Google was a verb, there was Alta Vista. In the mid-90s, Alta Vista was search engine. It was revolutionary. It had a massive, fast web crawler and was the first to index a huge portion of the public web, making it incredibly powerful for its time. If you wanted to find something online, you went to Alta Vista. It was created by researchers at Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, and was a showcase of pure technological prowess. For a moment, it was the undisputed king of search, the gateway to the burgeoning World Wide Web. But Alta Vista's parent companies, first DC and then Compaq, never quite knew what to do with it. They tried to transform it from a clean, simple search tool into a bloated web portal, cluttered with news, shopping, and email services, hoping to compete with Yahoo. This strategic shift, honestly, diluted its core purpose. Meanwhile, 2 Stanford students were working on a new search algorithm based on PageRank. That project became Google. Google launched with a laser focus on one thing: providing the best, most relevant search results on a clean, fast loading page. Alta Vista, bogged down by its portal strategy and slower, less relevant results, just couldn't keep up. Users flocked to Google's superior experience, and Alta Vista faded into obscurity. A lesson in how losing focus on your core product can be, well, fatal. Webvan is a legendary flameout from the first dot-com bubble, and its story is a classic case of ambition massively outrunning execution. The idea itself was visionary, and honestly, way ahead of its time. Order your groceries online, and have them delivered to your door within a 30-minute window of your choosing. Sound familiar? It's basically what Instacart and Amazon Fresh do today. Webvan went all in on this vision. They raised a staggering amount of money, went public, and embarked on one of the most aggressive expansion plans in business history, promising to build a nationwide network from scratch. Their model, however, was built on incredibly thin margins and required massive upfront capital investment. They spent billions on state-of-the-art, automated warehouses, a huge fleet of custom delivery vans, and sophisticated back-end infrastructure. They expanded into multiple major US cities before they had even perfected the model or proven profitability in their first market. The operational complexity was staggering and the costs were astronomical. They were burning through cash at an unbelievable rate. When the dot-com bubble burst in 2000 and the funding dried up, Webvan's unsustainable business model was exposed. They simply ran out of money and collapsed, leaving behind a lesson in the dangers of scaling too fast without a viable path to profitability. Before the smartphone, there was the PDA, and the king of the PDA was Palm. The Palm Pilot was a game-changing device. It put your calendar, contacts, and notes into your pocket. It was simple, it worked, and it had its own passionate developer community and a beloved operating system, Palmos. They were the pioneers of handheld computing. They even made some of the first true smartphones with the Trio line, which combined a phone with a PDA and a keyboard, and for a while, it was a serious competitor. Palm had the brand recognition, the technology, and an early lead. But Palm's story is one of fumbled opportunities and being caught between giants. A series of bad corporate decisions, including splitting the company into hardware and software divisions and then reuniting them, stalled their momentum. When the iPhone and Android arrived, Palm was caught flat-footed. They tried to fight back with a brilliant but delayed new operating system, WebOS, and the Palm Pre. Many reviewers, myself included, loved WebOS. It had features like cards for multitasking and synergy for contacts that were years ahead of its time. But it was too little, too late. The hardware wasn't quite there, the app ecosystem couldn't compete with Apple's and Google's, and they lacked the marketing muscle and carrier support to make a dent. They just couldn't keep up the pace of innovation and ecosystem building required to survive. Vine was pure lightning in a bottle. 6-second looping videos. That's it. The constraint was the genius. It forced a new kind of creativity, giving rise to a generation of digital comedians, musicians, and artists. It launched in early 2013 and was acquired by Twitter before it even officially went public. For a couple of years, it was a cultural force. "Do it for the Vine" became a common phrase. It was a factory for memes and viral stars, and it fundamentally changed the landscape of short-form video content. It had a unique, raw energy that was incredibly compelling. But after the initial explosion, Vine stagnated. Being owned by Twitter turned out to be a double-edged sword. They had resources, but they also seemed to lack a clear vision for Vine's future. While competitors like Instagram and Snapchat were rapidly adding new features, longer videos, stories, filters, direct messaging, Vine stayed largely the same. They were slow to build out monetization tools for their top creators, who eventually started leaving for platforms like YouTube and Instagram, where they could build a more sustainable career. With its user base and cultural relevance waning, and facing pressure to cut costs, Twitter eventually made the difficult decision to shut Vine down, leaving a void that was quickly and completely filled by its rivals, most notably, TikTok. Jawbone was a company known for beautiful design and ambitious ideas. They started with high-end Bluetooth headsets that looked more like jewelry than tech accessories. Then they moved into portable speakers with the Jambox, which pretty much created the premium portable speaker category. And then they jumped into wearables with the Jawbone UP, one of the first mainstream fitness trackers. The UP band was stylish, focused on holistic health tracking, and had a fantastic companion app. For a time they were seen as a major player in the emerging wearables space, a design-forward competitor to Fitbit. The problem for Jawbone was twofold: brutal competition and crippling operational issues. The wearables market became incredibly crowded very quickly. They weren't just competing with Fitbit, but soon with giants like Apple, Samsung, and Google. This put immense pressure on pricing and features. At the same time, Jawbone was plagued with manufacturing and supply chain problems. Their early UP bands had high failure rates, leading to costly warranty replacements and damage to their brand reputation. They struggled to produce their more complex later products at scale. It's one thing to have a great design and a good idea. It's another thing entirely to reliably build and ship millions of units of complex hardware. The combination of intense competition and an inability to execute on the hardware side squeezed Jawbone out of the market. In the 1990s, Compaq was a titan of the PC industry. They were famous for being the first company to successfully reverse engineer the IBM PC, creating a fully compatible clone. This move democratized the PC market and rocketed Compaq to the top. For a while, they were the largest supplier of personal computers in the world. They were known for quality engineering and were a dominant force in both the consumer and enterprise markets. They were a massive, profitable, and respected company that seemed to be a permanent fixture in the tech landscape. But as the PC market became more commoditized, with razor-thin profit margins, Compaq struggled to find its next act. They were slow to react to the rise of the internet and new computing paradigms. Their major strategic move was to acquire other old-guard tech companies like Tandem Computers and Digital Equipment Corporation, the creators of Alta Vista. These acquisitions made Compaq even bigger and more complex, but they didn't fundamentally change their trajectory or give them a strong foothold in the future of computing like servers, software, or services. Dell, with its innovative direct-to-consumer model, was eating their lunch in the PC space. Ultimately, Compaq, a giant that had failed to innovate beyond its original success, was acquired by its rival HP in 2002, a move that signaled the end of an era for one of the original PC pioneers. So, as we look back at this graveyard of fallen giants, from BlackBerry to Compaq, a clear pattern emerges. No matter how big you are, how much money you have, or how dominant your market position seems, you are never safe. The tech industry is defined by relentless, unforgiving change. The moment you believe you've made it and can coast on your past success is the moment you become vulnerable. The very same forces of innovation and disruption that build empires are the ones that are constantly working to tear them down. It's a paradox that sits at the very heart of technology. The lessons from these stories are tough, but essential. Success in this world demands a rare and difficult combination of traits. It requires constant, paranoid innovation, always looking for what's next, even if it means disrupting your own successful products. It requires a deep, almost obsessive understanding of your users and the market, being able to anticipate their needs before they can even articulate them. And above all, it requires flawless execution. Having a great idea is one thing. Being able to build it, scale it, market it, and sustain it is another thing entirely. It's an incredibly high bar. Ultimately, the stories of the fallen aren't just cautionary tales, they're a map. They highlight the pitfalls and the wrong turns, showing the next generation of innovators what to avoid. The tech landscape of tomorrow will be shaped by those who learn these lessons, who stay humble, hungry, and agile. Because for every company that fails, there's an opportunity for a new one to rise and take its place. The only question is, who will it be? Let me know what you think in the comments.